Evans, KC, a lawyer with a firm known as Stringham, which is centered in Lethbridge, Alberta, and that's where he does much of his work, but he conducts trials across the province. And John's legal ability has been recognized by being awarded King's Counsel, or KC. John also volunteers as a member of the Alberta Judicial Nominating Committee. To my right is Dr. Julian Martin. Dr. Martin is a retired history professor from the University of Alberta with advanced degrees from Cambridge University. Julian has volunteered on many committees in Edmonton and Sherwood Park areas and serves on provincial quasi-judicial tribunals. Far end of the table is Mr. Greg Clark, an entrepreneur and consultant focusing on information and knowledge management. Greg has the experience of serving one term as a member of the Legislature of Alberta for Calgary Elbow. He too is a recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal. Currently, Greg serves as the chairman of the Balancing Pool of Alberta and advises and consults organizations relative to proper board governance. We are your Electoral Boundaries Commission, and we have been traveling the province for the last three weeks. And this is our week for Northern Alberta, and we're happy to be here. And we had a great trip up here, and we look forward to hearing from those of you who are presenting. I also want to just introduce to you Mr. Aaron Roth, who's in the front row. He can wave. If you have any written material that you're going to present, if you want to leave it with us, leave it with Aaron, and he'll make sure we get copies. The Alberta Electoral Boundaries Commission is an independent commission established by the Legislative Assembly of Alberta, and we have the task, which is given to a commission every 8 to 10 years, or every two election cycles, to look at the boundaries and see if there is to be any change. Well, there's no question this time around there will be changes. Why? Because first of all, the legislature has expanded the number of seats from 87 to 89. So we've got 2 additional seats to apportion in the province. And by the next election, there will be 89 new electoral divisions. It's helpful to see what our timeline is like in order to give an idea of the process that we'll be going through. First of all, this commission was established by the Speaker of the Legislature in late March of this year. We were able to meet a couple of times as a commission in April to discuss process and schedule. And then we commenced our public hearings in late May in southern Alberta, and we've worked through Prince Creek, Lethbridge, Drumheller, Medicine Hat, Brooks, Calgary, Wainwright. You can see all the places we visited on our website. And we conclude our hearings next week. And after we've concluded all our public hearings, we will deliberate and review the presentations that we've heard, review the population statistics, and start working on our report. The timeline requires that we provide an interim report to the Speaker of the Legislature by late October of this year. That report will be made public. It'll be published in the Alberta Gazette. It'll be made public, and members of the public can respond to that report in the weeks and months after late October. We will then conduct a second round of public hearings, and by the end of March 2026, we are required to submit our final report to the Speaker of the Legislature. At that time, the government will enact enabling legislation based on our report, and that will be enacted, and of course the public will be notified of the new boundaries. You are aware, no doubt, that each member of the legislature is elected by only voters in that person's constituency. And I will use the term electoral division, electoral district, constituency, riding, all meaning the same thing. And again, for clarity, it is helpful to compare what has happened in the past in respect to electoral boundaries. In 2017, the previous Electoral Boundaries Commission issued its report and submitted to the Speaker based on only 87 constituencies. But that commission dealt with a population of Alberta of just over 4 million people. And the formula that they used is, as you can see, a formula based on 4,062,609 population divided by 87, and the mean average center number is 46,697. In Alberta and in Canada, we do not operate on the one person, one vote principle. We operate more on what has come to be known as effective representation. And the courts and the legislation have said effective representation is achieved as long as the targeted population is in that range of -25 to +25 of the mean average. And you can see those population figures on the screen. So anywhere from 35,023 to 58,371 was the permitted number to be allowed in each electoral division as a result of the 2017 electoral boundaries. Important numbers to recognize is the population figure. As I said, just over 4 million people in 2017. This year, the formula is before you, and our population is 4,888,723. And the mean average is obtained by dividing it by the number of constituencies, which will be 89. And you see the target population range of 41,197 to 68,661. That's the targeted range that we are dealing with as a commission. The population number that we've arrived at is based on what the legislation says we must have or must refer to, and supplemental information from the Alberta government. First of all, the legislation requires us to look at the most recent decennial census for Canada, which was 2021. In population terms, a lot has changed over the last 4 years in Alberta, so we're not solely relying on the 2021 figure. What most people don't realize is Statistics Canada does update their census figures on a regular basis, and added to that, the Alberta government, through the Alberta Treasury Board, Office of Information and Statistics, regularly updates and validates the population of Alberta. So if we look, so the number we're using is the number that you see on the screen, and that is a verified and validated population figure as of July 2024. That's the figure we'll be using, and that's the cutoff date, and that's the data that we'll be relying on. And I know that there's been public reports of the population of Alberta actually being 5 million. Well, that may very well be correct, but the most validated and verified figure is the one that's before you, and that's what we'll be using. The challenge for us as a commission is that the growth has not been evenly distributed across the province. It's been focused mainly on the two large cities, Calgary and Edmonton. And our task as a commission is to come up with a recommendation of the boundaries providing for the term effective representation. Again, it's not one person, one vote, it's effective representation. And that can be arrived at using a number of factors. Most of these factors are actually spelled out in the legislation. First of all, we look at the relative sparsity and density of the population throughout the province. We also look at factors such as common community interests and organizations, and that may very well come to play in our hearing today. Geographic features, prominently in the areas outside the cities, but to some extent even within the cities. We will be looking at geographic features like rivers and roads, major thoroughfares. Communication and transportation lines across the province will also be a factor. Our goal as a commission is to provide a report that provides understandable and clear boundaries to Albertans. And the legislation allows us to take into consideration other unique and appropriate factors that we will that will come to our attention through the public hearings largely. And now, as part of the public hearing process, we want to hear from Albertans. We want to hear from you as to what you'd like to see in your particular part of the province. So to commence our hearings, we have a list of 3 formal presenters, and because we have some time, if there's anyone else that would like to present, we'll allow those individuals to present after we've gone through the list. Our first presenter is Mr. Byron Kessler. So just have a seat at the table here, indicate, and by the way, all these microphones do mean something. The hearing is being recorded, and it will be the audio feed will be on the website in a couple of days, and it's also going to be transcribed, so Hansard will provide a written transcription that will be on the website as well. So, Mr. Kessler, please identify yourself, tell us where you live, and proceed with your presentation.
I'm Byron Kessler. I currently live in little town Gregoire Lake Estates, out by Anzac. Born and raised in Peace River. Worked in Robb, Edson, Peace River, Manning, Whitecourt, Grand Prairie, Dawson Creek, Rainbow Lake, Fort McMurray. I have a NAIT forestry diploma, a U of A forestry degree, and BC ITA Redfield journeyman electrician. I was the owner and operator of a now defunct forestry firefighting consulting company. So I'm not educated to the extent of all of this, but I do have some understanding of it.
You know the North, by the looks of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Used to be a forest officer, worked in the firefighting side of everything with the Alberta government. I'd like to thank you for giving the opportunity for the electorate to speak their minds. I have a simple question. Do you believe we need a referendum on separation? I would like to bring, I don't want you to answer that, but are we truthfully seeking the answer to that? Is that's why I put that in there. Are we truthfully seeking the answer to that? And with that, I'd like to bring back your attention to WCC. I don't know if you guys know of that, back to the 1980s. This isn't a new thing, right? Now, what is the basis of this whole premise and all of this stuff is equity, equality, fairness. Not everyone gets a blue ribbon in life, right? Not some of us don't even get first, second, or third plates, trophies. It's what it is. Life is not fair. I beg to differ at all that any of that, the trophies and first places. Life is based on ROI. It's on our return on our investment. You know, I might be 1,000th place, but am I happy with my return on my investment? And return on investment, I mean labor invested by me, my family, my neighbors, my community, my town, my city, my province, my country, my kingdom. Think of all this labor invested for what purpose? I added kingdom because we're still under the new Westminster Commonwealth. Some of the awards or whatever point that out. So all of this labor versus each of these entities taxing said labor. Labor meaning time away from the ones we love and the things that make us happy. I would hazard a guess that most of that happiness and the ones we love is what we would say makes us prosperous. They say you increase your wages to your employees doesn't make them happier. But if you give them more time with their grandkids or something, it does, right? So it's labor and return on investment of said labor. If the entities above decide to invest a large portion of labor banking on obtaining prosperity in one of the entities to which it's bound of all of those that I had mentioned, from kingdom down to south, decides they want to take a substantial portion of that, what is of our labor, you're doing well, in doing so can take the benefit from the whole, takes away from you. It has always been implied that if you work hard, you would get ahead. And I just point out, I tried putting something together here because I'm passionate about this, and the British Commonwealth is 2,418,000 people. I pulled that up on the web. I might be wrong. I'm just throwing numbers out, but I'm confident that that's close. Canada is 40,000 people, 1.6%.
40,000 or 40?
40 million, sorry. Roughly, again, 1.6% of the Commonwealth. We basically did away with the Commonwealth because they were taken from us a while back. We said we wanted to be our own, right? So our current situations we're in, Canada's at 40 million, Alberta's 488. We have the same situation. A lot of people think that Central is taken from the North and the West. So in saying all of this, I'm trying to put, and people are asking for this, this referendum. But what are people really asking for? They don't think it's fair. They're taking us. It's your labor. How do we get benefit? We work hard. I get a big house. I try and make people happy in my community, my town. And how, if it gets taken away, how does population, that, the Ottawa-Toronto corridor in there, the election's over, right? And how do we get equal representation? What they say, the whole West doesn't even equate to the East, let alone one of the big provinces. That's what I'm getting down to. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be population, but I didn't know the formula you had. And from what I've seen, I would urge you to go to that lower level, the negative 25%. And those extra seats that are there, the areas that I know people aren't going to like this, but if I work hard, I strive. That was sort of the dream. I work hard and I can provide for my family. I work hard and I can get ahead, but yet it doesn't seem like that. Last few years, I worked 80 hours a week, double. 2019, when everybody was saying they didn't want to go to work, my income was 185,000. I said I would go. I didn't get ahead. I felt underrepresented. It was all just taken away. There's no point in my labor. I should have just sat on my butt. This area works hard. We try to provide for the province. If there's no benefit to that, why do it? There's no representation, right? So the real issue is the lack of meaningful influence on our labor. This facilitates a political advantage taking, undermining the dignity and potential contributions of other underrepresented regions that care about the investment in their province. Right? Representation by population does not work. We can see that in Canada alone. The population of Quebec and Ontario versus everywhere else. It's essential we redraw the MLA seats to include population. I do understand Edmonton with 1 million, Calgary with 1.3 million people. You can't say, yeah, you get one hospital, and for McMurray, you get one hospital. I mean, that population has to be in there somewhere to provide But when you work your arse off and you get nothing, it's frustrating. What I would like to see is create a positive feedback loop where, yes, it might not be fair, but we know life isn't fair. But if we work hard, maybe we get more representation. I don't know how that works within your formulas. I don't know the whole scope of how all your formulas work, but that should be, that is basically what I'm saying, is that I agree population is a big factor, but it should be, if we invest, if we, that was the American, or the Albertan dream, you work hard, we're go-getters. I started a company. Yeah, it didn't work, but we give her. We put out. I guess in my final statement, is it better to reward less labor investment? And I put it down as labor because if I just had dollar, but it's actual labor. This is time people have, I chose to labor, and I didn't get to go see this with my niece or nephew or my kids or my mom. I missed out. Our investment in the labor we do, our sacrifices, should we not be rewarded for that? That is what I'm trying to say. And I mean, I pulled up tons of numbers, and if you look at the GDP of Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo, they don't give it to you, but they'll tell you that it's like $1 trillion over the next 11 years. Well, that's 90 billion every year. Compared to and with the lower population, now that's a fallacy as well, because the people producing that 90 billion, there's guys out here that fly in every week, still not from company paid, they'll pay it themselves from Ontario and stuff, right? They see the Alberta advantage, but their family's all there, their parents are there, their nieces and nephews are there, right? So they still do that. They still do that. So that it was like 800,000 GDP per capita compared to like the 70 and 80 of Edmonton and Calgary. One seat. And like I said, I understand population, but there comes a point where this little area getting split up 75 times doesn't equate to equality or fairness in this, and when this area gets one. So I mean, I from your formula there, I would urge you to go to the low end of that, and I just did a quick calculation that comes out to 118 seats. Do not give those out as definite. You always get this. The producers, whether it's Banff makes tons of money because the Japanese tourism, or I don't have the numbers, I don't have the figures, but a bunch of our province productivity comes from there. They should have an extra say. They should have the ability to say, no, we need to reinvest in this. We need to reinvest in this. Instead of it all coming, I want the yellowhead done. I hope I know I didn't have a fancy presentation like they taught us to do in school, and this is all just from my heart, and I hope I came across it. And if you have any questions of what I'm thinking, I hope that you understand where my head is at.
Mr. Kessler, thank you very much. We are going to probably have some question and answer, but just by clarification, or for clarification, you said you live in Gregoire Lake?
Yes.
So that's south of the city here?
Yes.
And that's in Fort McMurray, Lactovich?
Yes.
Okay. And is that where you operate your businesses as well?
No, I am a journeyman electrician right now. I work for companies within town.
Okay. Okay, so just for context, the population, and we're going to probably press you for some information that you could provide to us as a commission. So the riding that you live in is Fort McMurray, Lac La Biche. 2016 had a population of 44,166. The population for 2024 is 44,916, so about an 800 increase, very slight comparatively across the province compared to the rest of the province. But it's helpful to just look at your northern riding as well. Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo, in 2016 was 41,420, and the 2024 number is 45,917. Now, so those numbers are on the lower end, obviously, as you recognize the formula. And so your point is, look, there's not a lot of people in these ridings, but we shouldn't expand the ridings to make that number go higher, closer to the mean average. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Because it's difficult to get representation then in Edmonton.
Well, and I don't believe that it should be just population.
Right.
I like, if that's our range, why not have it at the low end? That's our equal representation. Then what we have left, you get economists or economists together and you say, okay, Rainbow Lake produces this, Cypress Hills produces this. Like, have a look at it and say, okay, hey, you know what? Edmonton and Calgary actually have pretty good GDPs or whatever. We'll throw one in the hole, and not split these ones we have up. Maybe we say, no, you can overlap. Why can't the next ridings overlap? You vote for two people in your riding. Your steady one, and then your one that could change. If your area doesn't, I know people aren't going to like it, but if your area doesn't prosperous in effort to labor gone for the whole province, you may lose that guy next time around.
Okay, just to assure you, we're limited to only 89 ridings. We're not suggesting any more than just an increase of 2.
That's fine. I'm just saying that is how I think.
And I don't want to monopolize the questioning, so I'm going to ask the other commissioners if they have any questions. Susan, do you want to start?
Thank you, and thank you for coming out. I have been looking at these ridings in preparation of coming up here, and it's extremely difficult. The ridings are massive, and as you say, huge economic drivers. I mean, this province is run on gas and oil, and the labor that comes out of here, and I hear you loud and clear. But the parameters that we're given is that this riding that you live in is 10,000 people short of just the average. So am I right? You're suggesting that we take the lower half, like we can go plus or minus 25%, and you're saying go as low as you can. Thanks for that clarity. And the other thing too, I just wanted to mention is we use population to start the calculations, to start where we're going to make the boundaries or change them. But there is, one of the parameters is communities of interest, and communities of interest, geographical features, communication. The chair went through it, and any other factor. So I think you brought up some factors that bear consideration, but I guess the bottom line is, given the parameters that we have to work with, this riding will only get one MLA.
And that's what I mean. But me coming here and saying this, I mean, I guess I represent 30-some thousand people.
You do,
So,
and know that.
Getting it out, like, I don't expect, he said that, it's gonna happen, but it has to be said.
You know, and I agree, and I think we have to hear it, and I feel compelled to acknowledge your case because it's valid. But the tools that we've been given can't help us solve the point you're coming from.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Appreciate your presentation. I appreciate that it comes from the heart. I think that's important. And as I've said to many people that have presented, now that you're seated there, I'm going to mine you for some information. And my colleague Susan brought up a point that I think is very helpful, and it comes from the legislation that we're governed by. And the sort of in Section 14 of the Electoral Boundaries Act, there's a catch-all, and Susan referenced it, any other factors that the Commission considers appropriate. And so I'm interested, Susan touched on it briefly with you, but I'm interested if you could help me understand the economic factors that you were alluding to. So if you were going to provide some parameters to that or some delineating factors, what would they be? How would we assess the positive and negatives of the economic drivers?
In my mind, I was saying, like, you can't just go gross economy. I mean, if Suncor and Syncrude and these guys decide we're going to take this write-off, this write-off, this write-off, this write-off, and they actually don't put anything back to the taxes or the province, then that's a loss for that area. It would have to be net benefit to the province. What goes into your coffers.
What about looking at it on a municipal basis? So would that be a way to look at it in terms of the municipality being in the black or being in the red? Yeah, and I am not sure if the RMWB is or not. I mean, I do know that like the city or town of Grand Cache actually went backwards and went to the not the RMWB, but the MD of Greenview, because they were in the black or in the red. So then that area now is represented by that whole of the MD of Greenview type of thing, right? And I guess Fort McMurray did the same thing because they couldn't get upgrade because their tax base was just the town. There is no town of Fort McMurray as per se. It is the hamlet or whatever of Fort McMurray within the RMWB of Alberta, right? What's your thoughts about the size of this particular electoral district and the fact that Fort McMurray is kind of divided? We have a northern part and a southern part, one represented by one MLA and the other represented by the other.
I mean, there has to be a dividing line. Most people to commonly understand that we've always, in our fishing regs, everything. It's been the rivers, it's been roads, things like that, provincial boundaries, basically, right? Whether that line is correct or not, I have no idea.
Thanks for answering my questions. Appreciate that very much.
River across to my colleague to my right, but just a quick question. Gregoire Estates, and how many people live there, and how many people live in Anzac?
Gregoire Lake Estates is 200.
Okay.
Anzac maybe 400 or 500.
I grew up in a town less than 400, so. Okay, thank you. Dr. Martin?
Thank you. And thank you for coming, and thank you for going to the emotional trouble of sorting out all the backstory on how labor is built into the provincial economy. So I respect that work. I wanted to touch, though, on one feature that well, you did mention that a lot of workers still fly in, so obviously I want to talk about the old story of the ghost workers, as it were. So, in your experience, it sounds like you got lots of it. There's still a lot of people living in company-controlled campsites, or flying in for spot work, and the like. So would you characterize the working population of this area as higher than the official census population?
Yeah.
And do you feel, and again, this is impressionistic, 10, 15 years ago when we were sort of in the boom of construction type work here, do you feel that the current situation of those extra workers compared to the situation back then is comparable, slightly less, the same? What do you think?
I would say that it's probably to the Fort McMurray area comparable. A lot of people have now drive. That's why we got a twinned highway for 40,000 people.
Yes, good point.
That this area has new, like, last job I was on, I think it was a maintenance job. So we just worked at this one facility, maintenance-wise, sat in tables like this, about this big. I think there was 14 of us. 3 of us were from Fort McMurray.
Right.
The others, Kamloops, Rocky Mountain House, Edmonton, and I'm not saying, I know we have said that there can be no hindrance to crossing borders for employment to the person. But to some degree, this is off topic, maybe, I don't know if it is, in my mind, if John's company has 85% out of province workers, that's fine, he's allowed to do that. The workers are allowed to do that. But then shouldn't Alberta encourage John to maybe try, hey, get some permanent housing? Like this has been continually going on year after year after year.
Well, I entirely agree with that consequence of workers coming in and not being grounded, as it were, in the municipal district. If you're not paying taxes, then you're getting some level of expensive services for free. And I think that's always been the problem up here, is how to service all the community properly when only some portion of the population is paying into it. Well, it's a classic problem, isn't it? And I think to some extent the fact that Fort McMurray has generated so much money so fast that sometimes people forget that is a problem. And I'm just probing to find out whether it explains why the numbers the official numbers remain relatively flat. Yeah. And you think that that's because this cycle of outside workers continues as a significant feature of the economy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I guess I'll build on a couple of the points that my colleagues have made, and then I have some geography questions, given that sounds like you've worked and lived all over the north, so that's very, very helpful for us. Just in terms of, again, maybe giving us another slice on the population. I think Justice Miller talked about the Fort McMurray, Lac La Biche, and Wood Buffalo are sort of 45,000. And just as a reference point, we've got that plus or minus 25%. In 2016, when they were established, they were around 10 or 11% under the average at the time. We're now 18 and 16% under. So we're still within the 25%, but we're already kind of getting, as you know, the rest of the province has grown incredibly. I mean, kind of a good news, bad news, right? We've had 800,000 people move to Alberta, and they generally are moving to Calgary and Edmonton and surrounding areas. So it's not that Fort McMurray isn't growing, it's just not growing as fast as parts of the other rest of the province. So that kind of gives us, and just one example of that is when I do a quick little bit of math, you add the two Fort McMurrays together, it comes up to just under 91,000, 90,833. There's one constituency in Calgary Northeast is 85,000. So that's part of the challenge that we've got is how do we balance all this out, right? I think you said it yourself. You got to accommodate for the vast geography up here. There's just not a lot of people, but there's lots of other consideration. And the folks in Northeast Calgary or South Edmonton would say, yeah, we also have needs too. So this is, people always wish us luck as we go through this, because we've got to balance all this. But again, as Justice Miller had said, the nice thing about the Canadian model is we can do that. We can say, you know what, there's a good reason that there's a sparser population, or we have the tools, I guess. It's just a question, I guess, of how. So in that, when I look at a map, I'm looking here at sort of the north, and I'm kind of going over towards like Slave Lake area. I'm just wanting to get a sense of kind of what the natural connections are here, north and south, east and west. So it looks like would you ever go over toward, like, is Slave Lake at all connected in this sort of, and it seems like you got to go all the way down south to Athabasca, back up again? And
Everybody talks that, like, after the fire and maybe a little bit before the fire, they were going to do a highway to Calling Lake Red Earth area or whatever. Never did transpire. From my understanding, the Saskatchewan government has built a highway paved to the Alberta-Saskatchewan border out past Anzac, and Alberta has left that as a mud trail that they freeze in the rivers in the wintertime. So there is no east-west corridors anywhere here. It is literally north-south, and to the north to Fort Chip. And as a forest officer, I understand some of the mentality up there. They don't necessarily want the highway going there because some of the people that live in Chip feel that we're heathens or that we pollute their culture, which to some degree I have to admit we do. The money, the things, the vices that come with it, right? So to the north of Fort McMurray, there's the ice road in the wintertime, but there isn't a permanent highway there. So it's basically an hour north of Fort McMurray and south.
Okay. So and the previous boundaries had an east-west divide in this region, and in 2017 they changed it to more of a north-south orientation. In your opinion, that makes sense? Yes, it is the corridors of what we have for traveling. Great, that's perfect. That's what I need to know. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kessler, I failed to mention that we normally have the presenters fixed a 7-minute time limit, and then 3 minutes for questions. This has been very, very interesting and very helpful. As I said, the list isn't that full, so we can be much more flexible. We've heard from you and we've grilled you for 35 minutes, so thank you so much for coming. You're excused. Please stay if you can, because sometimes we engage in more fulsome conversation after all the presenters, so if you can stay, please do so. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you again for letting us speak.
Our next presenter is Janice Bailey. Janice Bailey? No? Okay. Vaughn Jessam.
Good afternoon. Commission. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak today. I'd first like to welcome you to Fort McMurray, home of the oil sands, the epicenter of the economic corridors, the energy superpower that our current Liberal government professes. For the record, my name is Vaughn Justin. I'm a 45-year resident of Fort McMurray. For the first 30 years, I owned a restaurant and operated that. And for the last 15 years, I've been running constituency offices at Fort McMurray. I started with the late Honorable Guy Valaire from 2008 to 2012. Subsequently, I became the constituency manager for Kenny Al, the MLA for Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo, and Brian Jean, the MLA for Fort McMurray Conklin at the time, the leader of the official opposition Wild Rose Party. For Minister Jean, it was from 2015 to 2017. He took a break to take care of his family. He came back in 2022 to the President. He's now, as everybody knows, he's the Honorable Minister of Energy and Minerals. So just so you understand, this is not the first time that I made a presentation to the Commission. I was here the last time, and we still have the same debates to go on today as we did back then. Government really should be more proactive in addressing the calculations in which that they put the parameters that they put you under. Understand, I think you have exemptions, right? You have 1 or 2 exemptions or 3 with regards to the population?
Up to 4. Up to 4 under section
Up to 4.
15.2. Yeah.
Okay, up to 4. So, yeah, so I'm here today to emphasize the need and the desire to have a balance between a rural and urban area, especially in the northeastern Alberta. We have 2 strong ridings that represent probably about 10 to 12 First Nations, 2 Métis settlements, approximately 8 Métis Nation / OMG / Métis Nation of Alberta. And really, the balance of the rural-urban really works well with regards to especially the First Nations, who are really one of the bigger users of our constituencies and stuff out there. Before I get into some information which may be helpful with you in the future, I would like to, one request is that the Commission, well, first off, not go with 1 MLA. I've been through that before, and it was during the peak times, and it was not a fun time to be working in the constituency office. But the other thing is that the last time that they were here with the boundary commissions, we recommended a Athabasca River split. So north of the bridge, there's a population which involves mostly Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo. However, they carved a little piece of it and gave it to Fort McMurray Lac La Biche, probably to add some population to it, whatever. However, from a voter perspective and constituents perspective, it's really confusing to them. For 10,000 years, they voted in the same place, the whole 9 yards, and for some reason, they split it up. So if you can imagine Twilliger Drive or something out there, any population in Fort McMurray or in Edmonton, wherever, on the right-hand side, your MLA, I mean, you have that anyway, but here in an area, on the right-hand side is Tanny Allen, on the left-hand side is Brian Jean. Again, something that the last commission chose to do, which really, like I said, I also run elections campaign, and it gets really confusing. People go to a lineup where they go all the time, and they go to vote. They wait a half hour, 45 minutes to vote, and they say, no, you have to go over across the street. And so what that ends up doing is frustrating a lot of people who may end up not having that opportunity to go ahead and vote. Again, consideration, I know that you guys have your parameters. The whole idea about the north, especially northeast, northwest, I mean, you look at Central Peace Notley, you look at Fort McMurray, you look at the geographical area that we have to cover. I mean, we're talking Smith Landing, Fort Fitzgerald, all the way down to Fort McMurray, from Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo. Fort McMurray Lac La Biche is all the way from Fort McMurray down to Goodfish or Whitefish First Nation, which is just past Kikino. So that's like almost 350 kilometers. So when you talk about effective representation, to go with one to try to cover, even if it's just Fort McMurray North, it's a tall task to ask. It really is. Fort McMurray Conklin at the time was underutilized. However, when they went to Fort McMurray Lac La Biche, I mean, Lac La Biche is a growing community just like Fort McMurray is. So when you're looking at a commission, I mean, unfortunately, you look at today's numbers and stuff right there. We look at some of the stuff that you cover with Mr. Kessler. I can sort of help you understand it. There's some elements to consider when you talk about future growth. First off, inventory. So we talk about real estate. We talk about houses. You know, they will tell you they bought that they built 4 houses last year somewhere out there. Nowadays, however, the inventory for the last 2 years, inventory is stable and dropped down as far as when it comes to real estate. Real estate is now so low, and I won't say the quality, but the needs of the person that's buying it is not there. So what they are actually doing is they're doing door cost calculations. So anybody that's in construction understands, they look at it that may be worth their while to actually build a house rather than buy one because they can't meet the needs. So in the boom of the time back in the mid-2000s, or, you know, after the 1995, after Crenshaw made his announcement with the royalty regime changes, you know, we were building houses left, right, and center. And what ended up happening is it's all about supply and demand. Our community was stuck in a little cycle, if you will, and the government owned the land outside of it, the Crown land, and they did not release land timely enough. So what ended up happening is people were paying anywhere from $250,000 to $350,000 just for a lot of land to build a house in. And then when you add in your door cost, you're looking at $600,000 to $700,000. Approximately about 15 years ago, we had our first $1 million sale of a house. Now there's all kinds of them that are out there. And I mention that as the past because nowadays the price of land mostly is from $60,000 for a lot of land to $90,000, $120,000. So did you fly in or did you drive in? You drove in. Okay. So one of the areas. So when we look at population growth back in the mid-2000s, we were going to 250,000 people. We expanded the lots we expanded the area in the north of Fort McMurray, and we also did it to the south. So right now we have the capacity to hold another 60,000 to 80,000 people without having to release any more land and stuff like that. A lot of it's service ready, and now because the prices are affordable, we see the opportunity to build more houses. So those are indicators of what's to come. So last week we attended the groundbreaking of Home Depot. Home Depot is going to build a new store in Fort McMurray. Corporations such as Home Depots don't build businesses in the middle of the Sahara Desert. The economic growth that's projected for Fort McMurray is exponential. We also talk about Pathways Alliance. So you guys are familiar with Pathways Alliance. They are a conglomerate of the oil sands, the major oil sands players who have come together to create the carbon capture and storage facility to help reduce their carbon footprint. That is at the table of the federal government, waiting for that to be released. Based on the direction that the current Prime Minister is giving, we see that as being a low-hanging fruit for them that will drive the Alberta economy in the short term. It can be anywhere from $20 to $40 billion in investment. Some of it is in Cold Lake, but also here in Fort McMurray. They have to retrofit their units. There's basically 6 organizations that are involved in it. The investment in that would be something to keep Fort McMurray busy for the next 5 years alone. The census right now is currently being done. The municipality has just finished the census. They don't have the final numbers yet. However, they see a significant increase in population in Fort McMurray. Those numbers should be released probably before you finish your commission, before your mandate is up. So it might be a good opportunity to reach out to the municipality. They may be able to give you some raw data that you can use for it. But the current census that was, you're right, 2021, 5 years without a census is not very supportive of a community that's always looking for extra dollars from the federal, provincial dollars. So, as you know, our community is funded based on their population. We have 76,000 people in the regional municipality. Well, Buffalo, we're not talking south and, Lac La Biche area when it comes to Fort McMurray, Lac La Biche. And the last numbers we have, you asked about the camp, the last numbers we have, there's about 30,000 people that live in the camp. To put it in perspective, in the mid-2000s, when we were at a peak, we had a population of 80,000 people and 80,000 in camp. It was 1-to-1 at that particular time. So at that time, then Mayor Melissa Blake, when CNRL and Albion had put in for their oil sands development, the municipality had sought intervenor status, and she actually intervened in the applications through AER or whatever the name was at the time. And what she had said at that particular time is, our community cannot handle any more population. That's because we were still landlocked because of the Crown land and stuff out there. A beautiful drive from here to downtown right now is 10 minutes. At that particular time, it could take you 3 hours. If non-peak hours, and during the beginning of the morning shifts, the evening, you can look at 2 to 3 hours. If there's no accident, if there's an accident, it could be 5 to 6. So you visualize an ambulance as pick somebody up on the highway and they're sitting at the top. So trying to get them down through there. That's the situation we're in now. Right now, we're in a more favorable situation. When you talk about camps, there is a desire, especially with the government and with industry, to reduce the size of the camps. Camps were created because once every 6 months, Syncrude or Suncor would have to do a turnaround. And so they were bringing 4,000 to 5,000 people, if not more, to do the turnaround. And it was for like 2 months, and that was it. So camps were used for that because it didn't want to put the pressure on the community. So the government the community still support camps for that type of business. What we don't support is industry has now used that there to create fly in, fly out. And we're talking about people who were born and raised in Fort McMurray, and we're told they had to move to Calgary if they wanted to keep their job. And having shift schedules like 14 on and 14 off. They have hubs. Edmonton's a hub and Calgary's a hub. So you get yourself to either one of those, and they'll fly you from there right into camp. You don't stop at the airport. They have 6 aerodromes north of the city. We have more aerodromes north of the city than probably anywhere in Canada. At one time, some industry was flying their own 737, 747, big Boeing, bringing them in. They own their own planes. They brought them in. They eventually got out of the airplane business and gave the contract to WestJet. So if you're ever in Edmonton and Calgary and you're waiting for your plane and you look at the departures, have a look. At any given day, you see 6 to 8 flights to Albion, not Fort McMurray, no, Albion, to the different oil sand sites. They fly over it. There's a significant move now, so things have changed in that they are moving toward establishing the community in which they build. And we're not just talking Fort McMurray. So the Minister of Energy and Minerals, she speaks on behalf of Cold Lake, Bonnyville, everywhere you've been. Medicine Hat, Lloydminster. I mean, they all have the same problem. They suffer. They suffer because industry has been addicted to these camps that allow them to house them there. They have them, so if they didn't have them there, they live in-house, in the community, then they would end up, maybe they wouldn't make it to work the next day or somewhere out there. Kid's sick, I can't, well, no, you stay home. Well, they have dedicated labor, and that's one of the big things they like about what they fail to look at is the psychological disadvantages that camps have, and that has everything to do with increase in divorces, mental health and addictions, you name it, sleep schedules. There's many studies that say that anything over 8 hours to 10 hours is not productive. Especially, it's one thing to do it 5 days a week, to do it 14 days a week. So, having said that, they are moving towards. So, some industry partners have made it a priority that their contractors hire people from Fort McMurray, or they have an address here. Some of it is, it's an address or whatever, but at least we're getting them into the community and stuff out there. They don't get the camp. They have to commute back and forth and stuff out there. So it helps to that extent. And this is what has driven down the availability of houses and stuff out there. The other thing that they're doing is they're moving more people into town. So Suncor is making a priority not priority, but basically when they're hiring new people, engineers, laborers, you name it, they're hiring people from within Fort McMurray, or you have to come to Fort McMurray. The job offer says you have to relocate, which is a total change in mentality, which is a good sign for the future of things to come. Well, we're not there yet with industry. We're moving that way, and that's just with regards to camps. It is a mandate. If you understand. The government, they look at the price of oil. That's, from the financial side of it, they look to see where they create revenue streams. If you look at 40, but never mind coming from Edmonton or Calgary or Red Deer, how about the people that come from BC, people that come from Eastern Canada and stuff out there? There's about 40% of people that come in from there that work in the camps pay absolutely no Alberta taxes. And when you look at opportunities for revenue stream, those are the people will move to Kelowna. They'll buy a package, and they will fly to Calgary, and then they get on the jumbo, and then they're there, right? They're there with the labor. The labor is mostly from the East Coast, but people still live back there. They fly out here for 14 days, and they go home for 14 days, right? The toll that it's having on people is evident now. You can see that they are looking to switch away from that, but it's still a big concern for them. The other things we look at is you hear about data centers. So Fort McMurray is primed for at least one, if not 3 data centers. And these data centers are the operators that really like the northern part of Alberta. Number one, because it's colder. 40% of their cost is cooling the data centers. So having it where the temperature is minus 40 is significantly reduces that. They require a size of about 40 acres. And there's one, Minister Jean speaks of it often. There's one that's on the cusp of signing that will have 1,000 jobs for construction. The operation of it, they're no different than the old towers that you had before laptops, and you go in and you have to change your hard drive out all the time. The maintenance on those are very high. Data centers require to build a data center, you're required to be off-grid. You're not allowed to access power from the grid. So you have to be self-sufficient. So this is an opportunity for organizations such as Suncor and others that have power. Suncor currently puts back onto the power grid about 860,000 kilowatt hours. So that's an opportunity. So for here, we have the water systems, access to water when it comes to generating power. We also have a dedicated labor force. These people that are in camp or the people in here, they're there as well too. So, yeah, so in the end, what we look at is when we look at what the recently elected federal Liberal Party and the Prime Minister talks about creating that energy superpower, it starts in Alberta, it starts in Fort McMurray, and we are on the cusp of an increase in population. Minister Jean spoke at the local Chamber of Commerce, and there's, you know, he sees that, you know, creating super cities within Alberta, you know, that can have anywhere from 250,000 people in. When you talk about the connectors, so the government has, for the last year, been actively setting up the road from here to Peerless Lake. So that's our 686. 15 years ago, when they did the overpass for North Parsons, they actually created an overpass that was for heavy load, so it's a wider turn and stuff like that there. So we'll go from here to Peerless Lake. Red Earth is what it is, and then you go north. So you will see about 3 hours difference in the travel, and they are there. Like they've already, Peerless Lake, the First Nation band and stuff like that there, they were isolated. They are now have paved roads. They're looking at actually going from Fort McKay, which will reduce it even more. The other one is the Lost Road. Lost Road has never been a priority. It was something that Ralph Klein announced during the Centennial of Alberta that he committed to. Nobody ever did. Alberta has committed to the Lost Road, and that is on the planning stage as well as the minerals transportation economic corridor all the way from Northwest Territories down to Edmonton. The Minister of Transportation for Alberta signed a memorandum of understanding with the Minister of Northwest Territories to create an economic corridor to be able to move their minerals into Alberta to be able to process them for them. So, having said that, I'll wrap it up and get my timers. But I really, really look to see you use your opportunity to give us exemptions. We cannot go back to the one. It is a when you talk about effective representation, you will not get effective representation. I worked with Mr. Honorable Guy Bruleur during the time of the peak, and this is a 3-hour drive for a 10-minute drive. Like it was terrible. We cannot go to those.
Okay, when you said you can't go back to one, you mean one electoral district,
that's right.
which now encompasses
we
two.
had, yeah, so
okay.
Up until 2012, we had Fort McMurray with Buffalo, which came from Fort McKay down to basically just outside the town.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you there because I think the commissioners are chomping at the bit
Sure.
to ask you some questions.
You bet.
Okay, I'm gonna start with Dr. Martin.
Oh, okay. Well, of course I'm interested in the shadow population, particularly since you put a number to it. Now, how did you do that?
Well, it's part of the census. So the thing to remember is we were very lucky. Mr. Clark, it's nice to see you. Thank you for your service as well, Mayor, as well. During the time with these 3-hour drives and stuff we had there, Guy Bruleur at the time was able to convince Treasury Board to put a dollar value to the 80,000 people that were in camp, because they still went to our hospitals. They still use it. Like the RCMP, it could have set up a station out there and stuff right out there. So this is a population. When we do a census in Fort McMurray, it includes the shadow population. Industry may be not always forthcoming with recome, but they do have numbers that they give to the municipality in order to be able to complete the census, because we are a unique community in which we get funding from the provincial government based on those people. And so when Melissa Blake said we can't handle it, they set up a community unto their own. They have hockey rinks, they have Tim Hortons, you name it. They have movie theaters, they have everything in those camps. You really have, whether it's, pardon me?
Can you give us some names to them?
Yeah, so Suncor Camp, Syncrude, Albion. Albion was the first one that came in with the Tim Hortons and the movie theaters, the hockey rinks, you name it. Like it's been so long that I can't remember the stuff are in there, but you have everything that's there. I mean, full camp service. We were there in 2019 because we are looking at setting up, the government of the day, under the Kenny government, looking at setting up a detox center out at the site, because there's so many people that were looking for those kinds of services. Like, these are they have their own doctors, they have their own nurses, they have their own medical facility. They were self-sufficient, and that's what she asked for, and I don't blame her for that, because at the time, we really couldn't handle it. But now the pendulum swung back, and now, thanks to the effort of Minister Jean and the government and the support, Premier Smith supports it as well too, is about building communities in which you work, profit. They see that, they look to see value to that. The more people that can work in Alberta, obviously the more taxes you get and stuff like that.
I have a quite different question, I think. And I want to talk about the Cochrane Road. I want to talk about 881.
Sure.
A lot of people commute to work down there. You know, I see Mr. Kessler nodding. It's not surprising since you're in Gregoire Lakes. I mean, that'd be a natural kind of thing to be working on sites all the way down that road. Is that quite common?
A little bit.
Okay.
So when 63 was not twinned,
Yeah.
and 881 was there, 881, half the people took halfway, right?
Okay.
So from commuting, yes, we have Long Lake there, we have Synovus, we have the other one. But they drive in and they go into camp, and they're there for 14 days. You don't get too many people that live in, I mean, Mr. Kessler's your name, but most of them have camp. The discussion is about reducing those camps. So we talk about, even whether it's Conklin, okay, Conklin loves to stay as a very small little knit community. However, they have a $50 million rec center out there, right? So the opportunity, the thing at the time was, when you talk about population growth, those are one of them, because you do have Long Lake, you have Meg Energy, you have the other ones that are down on that 881 corridor. So, yeah, there is some traffic on it from that perspective, but the traffic on 881 is very low right now. But the government must see things happen, because they've earmarked $100 million for 881. That includes passing lanes, staging areas. So they do see, like you hear it all the time now, the key factor with regards to economic growth is transportation economic corridors. So this is one of the main roads that they look at as the transportation corridor.
Thank you.
So, the map's brought up there, sir. So am I correct in understanding that the camps are on the road on the way down to Conklin? Is that where a good?
And beyond that.
And beyond.
And beyond that.
But
yeah.
that corridor is.
That's one, no, there's still north, the 30,000.
Right, okay, in this side of the city.
25, yeah, let's say 20,000 are north, 10,000 are south.
Okay. Mr. Clark?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really interested in a couple of things. And obviously the road, the 686 connecting over to Peerless First Nation, and then from there on to Red Earth Creek. That's the plan. And that's right. I was just looking this up. This is at like present tense in budget 25. That's kind of happening. Okay. Yeah. Right. And so that's going to help over time connect east and west, obviously, and also that escape road in sort of an emergency situation. So that's fantastic news. One of the things you mentioned, and we looked at this, at least I'd looked at this earlier. I think we may have had a brief discussion about it in preparation for this. Why is the constituency split where it is? You know, the river seems like a very natural place. Right. And that was, I think, just to make sure I'm not putting words in your mouth, you're suggesting the river is a very natural place to break the constituency. Absolutely. Part of the challenge we have is if population. Yeah, it's just the where people live. Because unfortunately, the government's still going, like, I understand the population, like 90,000 in Calgary Elbow or something out there is a significant number, right? I mean, but you have to take into consideration, like, I'm here to say, you can't go away from the rural, urban setting, especially when you're talking about First Nations, Métis, the rural communities out of there. I mean, when you're talking about UNDRIP, the whole nine yards, you have to be able to service that. When I worked with Minister Buller at the time in 2008,
there was never, if you came into the office and you were First Nation, we automatically sent you over to the member of parliament, because the provincial government had little or nothing to do with First Nation, because they were on reserve. They were funded by the federal government. Now, there's a significant investment by the province of Alberta, which I'm sure all the other provinces are, in ensuring that they have equal opportunity for economic development. They have access to mental health, that, you know, all the services that us Albertans grow to love and appreciate, is making sure that they are looked after as well too. So having one, like it would be a nightmare. Like we created, because I worked with Mr. Boudelaire prior to Minister Jean and Mr. Yao being elected, we actually have one office for the two of them. Just for, at that time, Minister Jean was the leader of the Walrus, and he did a lot of traveling to try to build parties up there. As a leader, it's a lot harder, like, you know, that's there to be able to, in your home riding, because you're always out meeting Albertans, because you represent Albertans, whether or not just your own riding. So with my experience with Mr. Boudelaire with 5 years, we were able to combine both offices and operate from there. It's really, we did it for most for most of the 10 years, as long as Mr. Jean was there, because it gives you more. You can, number one, you have a bigger budget, so you can staff more. You can meet the needs of people much easier, quicker, and have access. We pride in the work that we do there, and it's only because we have the ability to have the two of them there and be able to do that. To have,
Do you mind, I just want to ask a sort of a detailed question, because your comments about the traffic jam, I spent, before my time in politics, I spent a lot of time here. And in fact, this is the very first hotel I ever stayed in Fort McMurray.
and it was fog and flood.
That's right. Yeah, it was a different
Yeah.
time. It was
Yeah.
a different time, and so it's actually nice to see that things have calmed down a bit. Hopefully, that growth is a bit more sustainable. So, just a couple of quick points. We probably are going to have a tough time using the river as the natural break point for the constituency. It would be about 57,000 north of the river and only 33 or so south of the river if we did that without any other changes, just sort of a like for like. And so that doesn't quite fit within the plus or minus 25%, but. So that leads, though, to my next question. You talked about the growth and development kind of reserves or targeted development. Can you tell me where that's happening? Is it sort of in the Timberley, Thickwood, sort of north of the river? Or is it south?
It's north,
Yeah.
mostly north. So the municipality just completed a deal with, what's his name, Allard? So his name is Allard. He's from Edmonton, a developer. He's creating a mini South Commons in Fort McMurray.
Mini what?
South Commons.
Oh,
So
okay.
Edmonton South Commons. So he has already anchored Walmart. So Walmart is building a super center there. Canadian Tire is building, like, they don't build those without the expectation of delivery, okay? And adding to that, he has 54 acres that he has there. The availability of land of the north is still there. There's still another 30,000, 40,000 people can live there. Same thing in the south. So right now in the south, so Minister Jean, his riding is, other than the left-hand side of Thickwood, south, you know, south of the bridge. So he's looking, I mean, obviously, he doesn't want to see the 54 acres suck out all the business, so the idea is to try to balance with both. So the Fort McMurray Airport Authority has, you know, they're looking at Aurora Landing, where they're going to develop some big warehousing stuff out there to help offset that balance of retail. In that, the southern part by the airport, there's another 20 to 30,000 people that can fit in there. There's a development there right beside a golf course that their land was selling for $250,000. They've sat on it for 15 years. They are now ready to sell it for $60,000. We're talking in a very beautiful community and stuff out there. This is something I was told 2 days ago. So there is development there.
Anything further, Mr. Clark?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a very interesting presentation, and that, the fallout from the camp is gonna be a hard one to change it. I get the thing, but what I find interesting is that both MLAs share the same office at this time, is that correct?
That's right.
That must be a benefit, having two voices in the ledge
Well,
to
that's the-
speak for the area.
100%, and, you know, back then, when Mr. Boudelaire was the MLA, he was one.
Right.
And back then, we had, when I say, let's say, the government of the day, the PCs, they had 20 MLAs in Edmonton, they had 20 MLAs in Calgary. And they all say, well, we have the same pressures, but for McMurray, it was there, as Mr. Clark was saying, there was $100 million put into Fort McMurray. Just Mr. Boudelaire fought so hard that he ended up getting kicked out because they didn't want to listen to him anymore. When in actual fact, when you talk about it, where was this wealth being created from Fort McMurray? So when you have 20 people in Calgary that are saying, no, you know, I need more my, whatever, when you look at what happened, you have to be in that traffic jam to really appreciate what we went through. And so having two voices, and especially, you know, with Minister Jean being in cabinet, being treasury, is a huge benefit to our community, to the whole area. And when he speaks for all Alberta. Like I said, he really does. You know, he has Lac La Biche as his riding, but obviously industry, you know, as a Minister of Energy, he meets with the people, you know, Senior Earls of Cold Lake and Bonnyville and Lloydminster and Medicine Hat and even Lethbridge and stuff out there. The story's the same. You have to build more within the community, because otherwise we just shut everything down and you have even less, right? You have less services.
So in your opinion, the existing boundaries that are a north-south alignment serve you better than the previous boundaries when they were more east-west aligned?
I don't see how you would say east-west, because I don't, so Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo was Fort McMurray, there's no east-west.
Yeah.
Fort McMurray Conklin was literally, so what happened was Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo took on everywhere from, downtown all the way to Fort Fitzgerald, Smith Landing. So we were never east-west.
It was always north-south.
It's always been north-south, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans, any questions?
So I just want to, so you gave us a population of 76,000 for Fort McMurray. I've got a population of 80,568 for Wood Buffalo. Do you agree with that number?
Sure. So the 76 is for Fort McMurray, and then you're talking the outer areas as well, right? Yeah. But when comparable, when we're talking 15 years ago, when there was 80,000.
Where's the improvement district number 24 of Wood Buffalo?
So I don't know if that's the park. So
It's got 775 people. And Fort McKay has 669. You agree with that number? Is that?
sure.
Jambier is 194, is 376.
Yep.
And where's that? That's going
Jambier
north,
is
right?
south of town, so in between Anzac and Conklin. They have both a reserve there as well as a municipal setting.
And Gregoire Lake, 176 and 176A is in the Fort McMurray Lac La Biche.
That's right. That's a First Nation. That's 468. You bet.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Justin, this has been a very educational for us, much appreciated. If you have that in written form, please get a copy to Aaron at the front. And I'm going to make an unusual request. You know the community. And we're going to have to look at the city and the boundaries. Would you be able to do some research and get some economic growth projections from the city and the region?
Sure.
Because if we're looking at future growth in terms of, that's a factor we will consider, and that's a big factor, and we have this much data on it right now.
Sure.
So we need something from you.
You
So
bet.
if you could do the research,
I was on the phone with the mayor this morning to see if he had any updates
Yeah.
on the population. The population will be an eye-opener for sure, as well as the future economic growth. We have a very
and then
strong-
let us know at the same time when the census is projected, if the results are projected. So that we'll watch that with interest as well.
Sure, we have a very strong economic development, department here that has a lot of good,
Good.
strong numbers, especially for Dallas. The other thing last thing I want to say is when you talk about the population, you know, if Fort McMurray where Buffalo was to take all of north of the bridge, you still have areas in the south where you can add, for example, Smoky Lake belongs to, MLA Glenn Van Dyken, and he
Cold
goes
Lake,
Athabasca, like,
Okay, yeah,
like there's areas there where you can still stream from
okay,
and still be able.
good, okay.
Please do not take away our two. We need that for many different reasons.
No promises, but we are
No, I
asking you,
appreciate it.
we
No.
are asking you for homework.
We will provide that for you for
Okay,
sure, no
good.
problem.
Thank you.
And we will make
Get
sure that
Aaron's contact.
our legislators start talking about adding other stuff other than the population with regard to. Thank you very
Okay.
much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'll make another call for Janice Bailey. Is Janice present? No? Okay. I believe someone else has come in, Renee Wells? Sir, you've noticed we very strictly enforce the 7-minute rule, so don't expect to be treated any differently.
I thank you very much for that, and I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity, Justice Miller and your committee, to allow me to speak today. I apologize. I just jotted down some notes as I was hearing some of the other different presenters, and I'd only learned about your tour today at 6:04 when I received an email from somebody saying, "Hey, this is going on today," and I initially was reluctant to come down because of other conflicts that I had on my schedule, but this was important to me, and I needed to come down and take it in. And then while I was down here, I was listening, and I felt even more compelled to register and speak. So I know some of you drove, and some of you had taken a flight up here, I think is what was said earlier.
No, we all flew.
You all flew?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I wish you'd driven. Because if for no other reason, just to experience the immense geography in this part of Alberta. And it is that theme, geography, that I want to focus on as part of my discussion today. Ours, as you know, it's a specialized municipality. We're bigger than Nova Scotia. Amalgamation occurring in 1995, I believe, bringing the Improvement District number 17 and the city of Fort McMurray together. Just a little bit about myself. I came to Alberta in 1980. I was a member of the RCMP, and I did 3 decades of policing across Alberta and the Northwest Territories. I started out in Gleason, east of Calgary, and then I went to the opposite end of the scale in terms of population to St. Albert, where I engaged in city policing. The theme there was no call too small, and drove me crazy, but I digressed. I then followed up with federal drug enforcement in Edmonton, which took me to parts of northwestern Alberta. And then I put my name in. My wife's a teacher, and we wanted to explore another part of Canada, and we went up to the Arctic, the Northwest Territories, and we spent 5 years up there. And huge geography that we're talking about up there, with a very, very small population. And we came back down to Alberta. We had no intention that we were going to leaving this province permanently, and went to Rimbey, cattle country and oil country, I guess. They have some energy industries down there. Followed by a promotional opportunity in Lac-La-Biche, and then up to the Peace Country, where initially I was a traffic commander. I had overseen the activities of members in Valley View and Peace River, and we were responsible for 13 detachment areas providing, traffic, services, traffic enforcement, education, and awareness. And then, following that, I went into Grimshaw Detachment, headed that up, and then to Peace River for a brief time, and then down to Drumheller, and spent a few years there before I received my commission and moved up to Fort McMurray. And I got off the RCMP train at that point. After a couple of years here, I was with the RMWB as their Director of Emergency Management. And then eventually moved into health and safety into the private sector. And I can fill in some of the gaps. You heard Mr. Jessup speaking earlier about the camps, both from my time with the municipality, the RCMP, and also in health and safety. I get to know some of those camps. But so what we lack in population, when I talk about the peace country, we more than made up for it in geography, you know, with many communities dotting that part of northwestern Alberta. A lot of them small villages, fortunate to see the occasional police drive-through. If you look at Fort McMurray, this area, federally, Fort McMurray Cold Lake, we have one member of parliament serving 110,504 constituents. Just got that off the internet. PEI, we talked about this during the last federal election. It's smaller than an area. We joked that in Alberta, it'd probably be a county with a population of 179,280, has 4 members of parliament and also 4 senators. Good on them, I suppose. And if you look at it municipally, we have a council that's currently comprised of 1 mayor that serves the entire region. We're broken up into 4 wards. Ward 1, 6 councillors here in the urban service area of Fort McMurray, and there's 4 in the rural area. So I think the number is about 5% of the population in our rural area. When you take in Conklin, Janvier, the gentleman who spoke earlier, where he was from, and then you look north, they enjoy 4 councillors, and good on them, I guess, too. So our population may be on the lower threshold. And you've heard earlier about the shadow population, the fly-in, fly-out. It was reported, I believe, again by Mr. Jessup, that it was about 30,000 in all. Workers who come here from all over Alberta and Canada to work in the energy sector and its ancillary industries. Many of these workers probably spend more time here applying their trades than they do at their homes. And I know I have a few colleagues, former colleagues, that have been moving back and forth between Fort McMurray and other parts of Canada. They spend a lot of time in the air. We heard about the aerodromes, you know. So those are part of the pressures that we feel as a community. You know, whether it's the services that we provide municipally or other things, policing. Policing is a huge challenge, you know, and so one of the members of this committee has asked a question about can you name a couple of lodges? So the one I would point to is Wapasu Creek Lodge that services the needs of ExxonMobil up in northeast of here. When I first got on here with Wood Buffalo Detachment, I believe that camp was somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000. And then Exxon came in and they wanted to expand their operations. And they came to what was then PTI. They said, we need camp facilities. And so they came to the municipality for a development permit. And they ended up expanding in stages, and the plan was, you know, to go from that 2,000 to about 4,000 to about 8,000 to about 12,000, and then scale it back to about 10,000 now. I've been out of that game for a while. I don't know where they're at now, but I would joke that there are more people sitting in that camp than there was in the town of Drumheller, or the area that I policed down in Drumheller. And you know, you think about the simple amenities that we all take for granted. You know, if we have a problem, we call the police, or we call 911 if we have a fire. And we came to them and told them that these things aren't possible, you know, when you look at the drive that we would have in order to get to them. And I had driven that road a number of times, and well over an hour, you know, to get there one way. And so they would create their own fire service, and that created a problem because they would need water now to properly service a call if there was a structural fire on their properties. So it just it mushroomed or snowballed into different problems. There's also Suncor Fort Hills, Suncor Firebag, CNRL Horizon. They have a camp as well as used to be Royal Dutch Shell and Albion, now taken over by CNRL. They have camp facilities there, and they also have aerodromes. Now, earlier, there were some questions that were asked about, I know how the riding is, the two constituencies are split here. I know that and I think Mr. Jessup had spoken about Thickwood Boulevard runs east-west. If you live on the north side, you're in Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo. If you live on the south side, then you're in Fort McMurray, Lac La Biche. And you know, there's always been that talk. Hey, why don't we use the Athabasca River as a dividing line, which would present some challenges in terms of populations. And I get that looking at your numbers there, you know, plus or minus 25%. And so if it was ever to serve as that dividing line, perhaps a push south of Lac La Biche may be in order. I know that there's been considerable growth that or at least I've heard of, that F-35 program that is going into CFB Cold Lake, plus the heavy oil industries that are down in that area. I once had to drive Highway 28 on a number of occasions when I was posted at Lac La Biche. My wife and I recently taken that drive because we have some recreational property down in the La Biche area. And we were overwhelmed by the volume of traffic coming in and out of Cold Lake and Edmonton, you know, along that highway. But that may be a consideration for you to ponder and look at you know, taking in those some of that population that are in those counties and municipal district down there. So. I don't want to take up too much more of your time here, but my hope today is that you carefully consider the challenge of effective representation. That phrase really stood out for me today for the two constituencies that we have here in northeastern Alberta. They take in a number of diverse communities, industries, and employment sectors here. And the time that our member of parliament and our two MLAs spend on the road to serve those communities is immense, you know, and not only on them but also the support staff that they have in place. We all know too that Fort Chipewyan is part of that. We heard also about Smith Landing, Fort Fitzgerald. It's along the Northwest Territories border. There are small populations there, but they are constituents, and so where you're in a riding such as the many that are in Calgary or in Edmonton, those MLAs, those MPs, those councillors, they don't have that far to go, you know, to service those needs. You know, and again, I just reemphasize the fact that I sympathize with our elected officials here in this part of Alberta, having gone through that in northwestern Alberta. You know, whether it was doing traffic enforcement or trying to service the issues of awareness and education when it came to those problems that were killing or seriously injuring Albertans on our roadways.
Well, thank you very much. And pardon my ignorance, and the last presenter, Mr. Jessup, I gave him some homework, and maybe I can just supplement that request. Is there such documentation that when we look at Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo, Fort McMurray, Lac La Biche, where you can show us a map that shows Camp A about so many, Camp B. Can you get something like that to us?
I think that there are some sources out there.
Okay.
I know I once had access to a map when I was the Director of Emergency Management. Another resource would be ESRD, the Fort McMurray office. I was an industry liaison at a firm in
ESRD?
2014. Environmental Service, Sustainable Resource Development, Forestry Division. And so
That's the provincial agency?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
They're responsible for wildfire control, I guess, and attacking wildfires when they do occur up here. And as an industry liaison in 2014, my task that summer was to drive around the area, take some pictures, get some coordinates, so that they could put that into a map, and they knew where that infrastructure was that may need protections.
Okay. Yeah, so if you could, there's people I see in the audience nodding that information is available. You could put your heads together and get that material to Mr. Roth.
Absolutely.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've taken Susan, any questions of Mr. Wells?
No, but that was the most informative presentation, and I thank you for that.
Yeah. Three really good sessions. Mr. Evans?
No, nothing from me, thank you.
Dr. Martin?
No, obviously, I'm very keen on the maps because the fact that some provincial agencies are generating maps for their own purposes means that the camps are real. And the more real they are, the happier I feel about, the population number squabble. So if any colleagues, anyone in this room can provide us with those kind of resources, it will help us very much.
Yes, and thank you. I guess the one piece I wanted to pick up on is you mentioned going down south, Fort McMurray, Lac La Biche, potentially into Smoky Lake, and that area. We were down in that part of St. Paul. I can't remember how long ago. We've been on the road for a while, but we were definitely there.
Canalta, I remember.
Yeah, that's right. It was the Canalta. There's no question. That's just interesting to me as we kind of get dipping into the Lac La Biche kind of area. How far would you say that extends? We've got Smoky Lake somewhat to the west. Is that sort of the natural western boundary? And is there value, do you think, places as far south as St. Paul? Bonneville is obviously its own thing, I would assume. I know there's a lot of similarity in terms of the heavy oil and sort of that transition zone there. I guess I'm just curious if you could maybe just comment a little bit more on where the connections are on the southern end of the constituency.
Yeah, the one thing I would always want to be cautious about too is that whether you're involved in operating a ship or a huge aircraft, or deciding on electoral boundaries. These minor course corrections would be the rule of the day. You don't want to confuse the public. And, as we saw in Lac La Biche, pardon me, in Fort McMurray, we had people that would depending on what side of Thickwood they would be on, it would create confusion for them, and education was always a big part of that. But in answer to your question about those communities, I don't have a lot of knowledge when it comes to the size of these communities. I know, like Vilna, some of those other villages that are north of St. Paul. I don't know who takes those in, I'd be hesitant to try to say anything more on those. But I just thought as a consideration, that if you push south, that might solve your problem of, whether or not, there's enough representation, for Fort McMurray and Lac-La-Biche.
Yeah, I mean, I just really appreciate that comment, and I've written down the small changes versus major course correction. And, you know, part of the mandate is, clear and understandable boundaries. And, you know, these remote areas, these large, like you say, I think you used the word vast geography, or someone did if it wasn't yourself, and which I also wrote down, because that's why our laws are written the way they are, and that's the history of and the Canadian heritage. So just rest assured that's something we're going to, at least speaking for myself anyway, very much take into consideration, because it's a lot of area and not a lot of people.
A lot of area, but the people who are here, they want to make the best of what we have here. And, you know, I know, that generally speaking, that people feel, you know, quite strongly about, being heard down in Edmonton or in Ottawa. And, you know, very sensitive to the idea that, you know, that we may see major changes. And, I don't think that I'll be very happy with that, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Wells and the previous presenters, this is, we saw this, only 3 presenters, okay. You know, we have time for more. This has been very rich and very helpful to us. If I can just supplement the homework that I've been assigning to the presenters, a presentation in written form from the municipality may be helpful as well in terms of potential industry. This data center that just flashed up, I was intrigued by whoever talked about that. You know, the projection for growth of industry, which will bring related population, all that information is helpful. So, looks like we're, man, that artificial intelligence really works. They were just talking, the algorithms are following me.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that I point out too, it's all about relationship building. You know, we have 2 of our MLAs are here. Our MP is based out of here, and you know, there's that opportunity for collaboration among the different levels of government that we have. And you know, I would be concerned, you know, if my representative, you know, would be in some far-flung part of northeastern Alberta. It's a 5-hour drive from here to Cold Lake, 5.5 maybe, I guess if you take in bathroom breaks, you know, and you know, it just yeah, huge geography, vastness, you know, the land that has never ceased to amaze me, you know, whether during my time in the RCMP or now here in northeastern Alberta.
Yeah, it was former Prime Minister William Lyon Mackenzie King said that Canada is blessed with too much geography.
Absolutely.
One more question from me, and you really, your presentations have made me more curious. I thought, was it you, Mr. Justin, that said something about the Laloche Road or the Laloche Highway? Is that Laloche into Laloche, Saskatchewan? How far is that from here? From here? Yeah.
It's just where the Laloche Road is just before Janvier. So right now, the province of Saskatchewan has completed their road. So it brings us right up to the border of Alberta.
So once it's open, how far a drive would it be to Laloche?
To Laloche.
It is 140 kilometers to Janvier, 160 kilometers to Conklin.
So how long from there to Laloche is maybe another couple hours,
okay.
Another hour and a half.
Okay.
3 hours? Yeah. From here or from, yeah, so 3 hours from here. So, and the thing about Laloche is that it opens up a lot of opportunity for employment.
Yeah.
Good for trade and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So same thing as Peace River, the Red Earth opens up Grand Prairie. Grand Prairie really wants to have access to Fort McMurray.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to formally present while we're here? Well, we'll adjourn the public hearing. We'll stay for a little bit, and I'm sure we can engage in some more informal discussion. Thank you so much for coming this afternoon. Much appreciated.